Marcus Chen pushed his cleaning cart down the empty corridor of Deck 47. The wheels squeaking against the metal floor. It was 3 in the morning station time, and most of the crew aboard Celestial Station Orion 7 were either sleeping or drinking in the lower bars. Marcus preferred it this way. The quiet gave him time to think about things he probably shouldn't think about, like his daughter, Lily, back on Earth, or how much he missed tucking her into bed every night, or whether the medicine she needed would actually work this time. Was a janitor on one of the biggest trading stations in the galaxy, surrounded by aliens from 100 different worlds. But most nights he felt more alone than he ever had back home. The hazard pay was good, though. That was why he was here, scrubbing floors and emptying trash units while merchants and diplomats slept in their expensive quarters. Every credit he earned went straight to Lily's medical fund. His ex-wife's parents were taking care of her while he worked this contract 6 more months, and he could go home 6 more months, and maybe, just maybe, he'd have enough saved up. Marcus stopped at a junction where 3 corridors met. This section of the station was old, barely used anymore since they'd built the new maintenance bays on Deck 23. The lights flickered here, and sometimes the heating didn't work right. It was the kind of place people forgot about. He was about to move on when he heard it, a soft sound, almost like a whimper. Marcus froze. Had worked enough night shifts to know that strange sounds in empty corridors usually meant trouble. Could be a broken pipe, could be rats. If stations even had rats, could be something worse. He should probably call security instead. Marcus grabbed his flashlight and followed the sound. It led him to a service alcove near the heating vents, the kind of spot where steam pipes ran behind protective grating. There, pressed into the smallest corner possible, was something that made Marcus stop and stare. It looked like a tiny dragon. That was the first thought that came to his mind, even though he knew dragons weren't real, and this was definitely some kind of alien. The creature was maybe the size of a house cat, with scales that should have been shiny, but looked dull and gray in the flashlight beam. It had wings folded against its sides, membrane thin and trembling. Its eyes were huge and golden, filled with a terror that Marcus recognized instantly. Had seen that look in Lily's eyes the night they'd rushed her to the hospital, the look of someone small and helpless and in pain. "Hey," Marcus said softly, keeping his voice low. "Hey, it's okay." The creature pressed itself further into the corner, which wasn't really possible. Its whole body was shaking. Marcus looked around the empty corridor, then back at the alien. He should call this in. There were protocols for stowaways, for unregistered Xenos, for all sorts of situations that probably included finding tiny dragon things hiding in maintenance ducts. But something in those golden eyes stopped him instead. Marcus slowly sat down on the floor. He made himself smaller, less threatening. "I'm not gonna hurt you," he said, even though the creature probably didn't understand English. "I'm just a janitor." They stayed like that for a long moment, Marcus sitting on the cold floor and the alien watching him with terrified eyes. Finally, Marcus remembered the pizza slice in his lunch bag. It was cold by now, left over from his dinner break. He pulled it out slowly, making sure the creature could see his hands. "You hungry?" he asked. "I know I would be, hiding out here." He set the pizza on the floor between them and pushed it gently toward the alcove. The alien looked at the food, then at Marcus, then back at the food. It crept forward a few inches, moving like every muscle hurt up close. Marcus could see how thin it was. He could practically count the ribs under those dull scales. "Go ahead," Marcus encouraged. "It's not much, but it's all I got right now." The creature reached the pizza and looked at it for a long moment. Then it raised its small head and spoke. The voice was barely a whisper, scratchy and weak, but the words were in Galactic Common, the trade language that even Marcus had learned enough of to get by. "Sir, I cannot eat." Marcus blinked. "What?" "I cannot eat," the alien repeated. "But thank you." The words came out broken, like someone who'd Learned the language from recordings, but never really had a chance to use it. This is kindness. Marcus stared at the tiny dragon alien who couldn't eat his pizza, but was thanking him. Anyway, any normal person would have walked away then, would have called security and filed a report and gone back to mopping floors. Any normal person wouldn't have gotten involved in whatever this situation was turning into, but Marcus thought about Lily. Thought about all the times someone had shown her kindness when they didn't have to. The nurse who stayed late to read her stories. The neighbor who'd driven them to the hospital at 2 in the morning. The teacher who'd sent homework to the house so Lily wouldn't fall behind. He thought about how much those small kindnesses had meant. Okay, Marcus said slowly. Okay. So you can't eat pizza. He shifted his weight, settling in a bit more comfortably on the floor. You got a name? The alien tilted its head, those golden eyes widening slightly. Kiri, I'm Marcus, he said, and I'm guessing you're not supposed to be here. Kiri's whole body seemed to shrink at that. Please, she whispered, please. I hide good. I know trouble. I go soon. Marcus looked at this tiny, starving, terrified creature who was trying to promise she wouldn't be any trouble. He thought about the security patrols that swept these lower decks every morning. He thought about whatever protocols existed for dealing with stowaways. He thought about Lily and what she would say if she knew her dad had walked away from someone who needed help. When's the last time you felt safe? Marcus asked quietly. Kiri didn't answer, but the way she looked away told him everything. Marcus Chun had never been the hero type. He was just a guy who cleaned floors and counted credits and called his daughter every week. He was just trying to survive long enough to get home, but sometimes being human meant doing something stupid because it was the right thing to do. Listen, Marcus said, making a decision that would probably ruin his life. You can't stay here. They do security sweeps at 0600, but my quarters aren't that far, and nobody checks the janitor's closet. Kiri stared at him like she didn't understand. You help? She whispered. Why? Marcus picked up his uneaten pizza and stood slowly. Because you said, thank you, he told her, and because my kid would never forgive me if I didn't. He held out his hand after a long moment. Kiri took it. Her scales were cold and rough against his palm, and she weighed almost nothing when he helped her. They walked down the empty corridor together. A single dad janitor and a tiny alien dragon who couldn't eat. Marcus wondered what the hell he was getting himself into, but when he looked down at Kiri and saw something other than terror in her eyes for the first time, he figured he'd worry about the consequences later. Right now, someone needed help, and Marcus had never been very good at walking away from that. Marcus's quarters were small, even by station standards. A bed, a desk, a tiny bathroom, and a storage closet that doubled as everything else had cleared out the closet and made a nest of blankets for Kiri, who'd curled up immediately and fallen into an exhausted sleep. Now it was morning, and Marcus sat at his desk, staring at his datapad and trying to figure out what he'd actually rescued. The station's public database had information on thousands of species. He scrolled through entries, looking for anything that matched a small dragon-like alien with crystalline scales. Finally, he found it. Virathy. Entry was short, marked with warning tags, endangered species. It read restricted contact protocols, known trafficking targets. Marcus felt his stomach drop as he read further. The Virathy were empaths, creatures who existed on the edges of known space. They didn't process food the way other species did. Instead, they absorbed something the database called emotional radiation, a kind of psychic energy that most species produced without realizing it. Positive emotions fed them, negative emotions poisoned them. Marcus read that line 3 times, trying to understand behind him. Kiri stirred in her makeshift nest. You awake? Marcus asked, Turning in his chair, Kiri poked her head out, those golden eyes watching him carefully. I read about your people, Marcus said, gesturing at the datapad. Is it true? You eat feelings? Kiri crawled out of the closet slowly in the better light of his quarters. Marcus could see just how bad her conditioned washer scales were patchy, some of them missing entirely. Her wings had tears in the membrane. Yes, she said. Quietly, Virathi need emotion energy. Is how we live. Marcus tried to wrap his head around that. So when I offered you pizza, I cannot eat food. Kiri confirmed. Food does nothing for Virathi. But kindness. She paused, searching for words. Kindness is nutrition. She moved closer, still cautious, like she expected him to change his mind about helping her. I was on ship, Kiri explained. Her common rough but understandable. Bad people ship. They keep me in cage, make me feel their anger. Their cruelty is like poison. Marcus felt anger rise in his chest, anger at whoever had done this to her. They were trafficking you. Kiri nodded. Many Virathi are taken. Rich people want us as pets. Want us to make them feel good. But they do not understand if they are cruel. We cannot survive. She looked down at her damaged scales. I escape when ship dock here. I hide. But station is full of stress. Anger, fear. I am starving, Marcus understood. Then she wasn't starving because she lacked food. She was starving because she was surrounded by the worst emotions the galaxy had to offer. A trading station was full of tense negotiations. Stressed workers, homesick crew members, and criminals trying to avoid detection. For someone who fed on positive emotions, it was a desert. The pizza, Kiri said softly, when you offer it. I feel your intention. I feel you want to help. That was first good feeling in many weeks. Was like water in desert. Marcus sat back in his chair, thinking this was way more complicated than he'd expected. He couldn't exactly feed her breakfast, or buy her groceries, or any of the normal things you did when taking care of someone. So what you need, Marcus said slowly, is for someone to be happy around you. Not just happy. Kiri tried to explain. Need real emotion. True feeling. Many species fake emotion, but we taste difference. Real kindness. Real joy. Real love. These feed us. Fake smile. Polite words. These do nothing. She looked at him with those enormous eyes. You have strong emotions, she said, very strong. When you think about daughter, when you offer pizza, when you help me, these are real. This is why I still live. Marcus thought about that. Thought about how most people on the station were just going through the motions, doing their jobs. Trying to get by. Nobody was genuinely happy here. Nobody was sharing real joy or kindness. It was all transactions and protocols and professional distance. How long can you go without? Marcus paused. Not sure how to phrase it. Without eating feelings? In bad place, maybe 2 months, Kiri said. In good place with good emotions. Can go many years without more. But I've been in bad place for a long time. She was quiet for a moment. Maybe I have 1 week, she admitted. Maybe less. 1 week. Marcus had 1 week to figure out how to feed an alien on emotions, or she'd die in his closet. Okay, Marcus said. Even though nothing about this was okay. Okay. Let's think. He stood up and started pacing, which was hard in the tiny quarters. You need genuine positive emotions, right? Not fake stuff. Kiri nodded. So I need to what? Be happy at you? Not at me. Kiri corrected. Just be happy. I absorb what radiates from you. Is natural process. Marcus stopped pacing. When I think about Lily, he said, does that help? Kiri's scales brightened just a tiny bit. Yes, she breathed. That helps much. So, that's what Marcus did. He pulled up his photo collection on the datapad. and showed Kiri pictures. Of his daughter, he told her about Lily's laugh, about how she made terrible jokes that weren't funny, but made him laugh anyway. Told her about bedtime stories and scraped knees and the way Lily would dance around the kitchen when her favorite songs played as he talked. Something strange happened. Kiri's scales started to shimmer. Dull gray took on hints of color blues and purples and something that might have been gold. "It's working," Marcus said. Surprised. "Your emotions are very strong," Kiri said quietly. "Most species do not feel so much." Marcus had never thought about it that way. He just figured he was a regular guy with regular feelings. But as he kept talking, kept sharing memories and stories, Kiri kept getting brighter by the time Marcus had to leave for his shift. Kiri looked better than she had the night before. Not healthy, not by a long shot, but alive. "I will be back tonight," Marcus promised. "There's water in the bathroom and, well, I guess you don't need food. Stay quiet, okay?" Security doesn't usually check janitor quarters, but just in case, Kiri nodded. "Marcus," she said as he reached the door. "Thank you. Your kindness is saving my life." Marcus shrugged, uncomfortable with the gratitude. "Just doing what anyone would do." "No," Kiri said firmly, "not anyone. Only humans." Marcus didn't know what to say to that, so he just nodded and left for work all through his shift, pushing his cleaning cart through the busy corridors of the upper decks. Marcus thought about Kiri. He thought about how to keep her fed without anyone finding out. He thought about what would happen if security discovered her. He thought about the fact that he was now responsible for keeping someone alive through nothing but his own emotions. It was the weirdest thing he'd ever had to deal with. But that night, when he got back to his quarters and found Kiri waiting for him with slightly brighter scales and something that might have been a smile, Marcus figured he'd find a way. He pulled up his datapad and initiated the weekly call to Lily. "Hey kiddo," he said when her face appeared on screen. "Want to hear about my week? It's been pretty interesting." Beside him, careful to stay out of camera range, Kiri listened to him talk with his daughter, and as Marcus laughed at Lily's stories and shared his love across the light years, Kiri's scales grew brighter still. It turned out that human emotions weren't just strong, they were enough to keep someone alive. 3 weeks passed, and Marcus fell into a routine that would have seemed insane to his past self. Every morning before his shift, he'd spend time with Kiri. Sometimes he'd tell her stories about Earth, sometimes he'd show her videos of Lily, sometimes he'd just sit and read books out loud, putting emotion into the words. Whatever worked to keep her fed. Kiri was getting healthier. Her scales had regained their shimmer, displaying colors that shifted in the light: deep purples, ocean blues, and flashes of gold. The tears in her wings were healing. She even started to fly a little. Short bursts around the quarters when Marcus was home, but keeping her hidden was getting harder. Station security had increased patrols on the lower decks after some smuggling incident Marcus didn't fully understand. Twice he'd had to hide Kiri in the ventilation shaft when maintenance crews came by unexpectedly. And then there was the other problem. Marcus had started to change. Had always been a quiet guy, someone who kept his head down and did his job, but lately people were noticing him. "Morning, Marcus," the dock manager had said yesterday, actually smiling. "You're looking good today. Everything all right?" Marcus had mumbled something about getting better sleep and hurried away. The truth was more complicated. Taking care of Kiri had forced him to feel things more intensely. He couldn't just go through the motions anymore. He had to actively generate positive emotions, had to find joy and kindness and hope in every day, or Kiri would starve. It was exhausting, but it was also changing him. He laughed more, he noticed good things more, he connected with his daughter more deeply during their calls because he'd been practicing opening up emotionally. Kiri had explained it during one of their evening talks. Humans keep emotions locked inside. She'd said, like pressure in container. But when you share emotions for me, you release pressure. It's healthier for you too, Marcus had. Never thought about it that way. Then came the day everything got complicated. Marcus was mopping the floor outside the security office when he overheard a conversation. Another reported sighting of a Virithi on the Finderthi station. The voice belonged to Threll, the head of security. He was a Caxian, which meant he had 4 arms and took his job way too seriously. That's the 3rd report this month. Thrall continued. Someone's hiding something. Marcus felt his heart rate spike. He forced himself to keep mopping. To act normal. Could be a sensor glitch, another guard suggested. Virithi signatures are hard to detect. No. Thrall said firmly. Someone saw something. I want increased sweeps of all residential areas, starting with the lower deck worker quarters. Marcus finished his mopping as quickly as he could without looking suspicious. He needed to warn Kiri. He needed to figure out a plan. He needed to not panic, even though panic was definitely happening that night. Marcus sat in his quarters with Kiri perched on his desk. They're going to sweep the residential areas, he told her. Maybe tomorrow. Maybe the day after. We need to move you. Kiri's scales dimmed with worry. Where I go? She asked. Station is full of sensors. They find me eventually. Marcus ran his hands through his hair. I know. I'm thinking. Maybe we can... He stopped. What could they do? Smuggle her off the station? He didn't have those kinds of connections. Fake documents? He didn't know how to turn her in and hope for mercy? That would mean deportation for sure. Probably worse. I have idea, Kiri said quietly. Bad idea, but only idea. What is it? I can hide in your emotional space, she explained. When security scan, they look for Virithi energy signature. But if I stay very close to you, very quiet, your emotions might mask mine. Might? Marcus repeated. Might? It wasn't much of a plan, but it was better than nothing. The next day, Marcus went to work with Kiri, hidden in his jacket. She was small enough to fit, barely. And she'd promised to stay completely still. Marcus had never been so nervous in his life. Every time someone looked at him, he was sure they could tell. Every time a security guard walked past, he expected alarms to go off, but nothing happened. He made it through his shift and back to his quarters without incident. See? Kiri said, crawling out of the jacket. Your emotions are very loud. They cover mine. Loud? Marcus asked. That's not exactly flattering. Kiri tilted her head in that way she had. Is not insult. Human emotions are strongest I ever feel. Most species feel dim. Like candle. Humans feel like fire. Marcus had heard variations of this before from Kiri, but it still seemed weird. Had always thought of himself as pretty average in the feelings department. Is this a human thing? Marcus asked. Or a me thing? All humans, Kiri said with certainty. I read about humans before. In education, Virithi study all species that produce strong emotions. Humans are famous among my people. Famous for what? For feeling too much. Kiri said simply. For caring when it makes no sense to care. For hope when hope is foolish. For love that defies logic. She stretched her wings, testing the healed membranes. Most species guard emotions carefully, show only what benefits them, calculate emotional display. But humans... She made a sound that might have been a laugh. Humans feel everything, all the time. And show it is reckless, is beautiful, is why I still alive. Marcus thought about that while he heated up his dinner. Actual dinner this time. Not just pizza. So what you're saying is humans are weird. Very weird. Kiri agreed, but good weird over the following days. Marcus started noticing something else. The other janitors were happier. The dock workers smiled more even. The usually grumpy maintenance crew seemed less stressed at first. Marcus thought he was imagining it, but then the dock manager stopped him one morning. Don't know what you're doing different. Chun, the manager said. But keep it up. Morale's been better on your shifts. People seem happier around you. Marcus had mumbled something and walked away quickly that night. He mentioned it to Kiri. It's not just you, she explained. It's me too. When I eat emotions, I also give back. Is natural process. Virathi absorb negative. Amplify positive. Like filter. So you're making everyone around us happier? Little bit, Kiri admitted. Cannot help it. Is what Virathi do. Marcus sat down heavily on his bed. That's why people trafficked your species. They wanted to keep you as mood enhancers. Kiri's scales darkened. Yes, but they do not understand. We cannot enhance what is not there. We need real positive emotions to work with. Cruelty gives us nothing to amplify, only kills us. Slowly, Marcus felt that familiar anger again. The anger that came whenever he thought about what had been done to Kiri. Well, you're safe now, he said firmly. We'll figure this out. We'll keep you hidden until... He stopped until what? Until his contract ended? Until he could somehow sneak her off the station? Until magic security protocols changed? Thank you, Marcus, Kiri said softly, for everything. Even if they find me. Even if this ends badly, thank you for trying. Thank you for showing me that kindness still exists. Marcus looked at this small alien who'd somehow become part of his life. He thought about Lily. About what she'd say when she found out her dad had been hiding a tiny dragon in his closet, probably lovaged, probably asked if Kiri could come home with them, and looking at Kiri's hopeful face, Marcus realized he'd been thinking the same thing. Hey, he said, making a decision. When my contract ends in 3 months, I'm going back to Earth. Would you, if we can get the paperwork somehow, would you want to come with us? Kiri stared at him. You would take me to your home? Yeah, Marcus said. Lily would kill me if I didn't. And you need someone to keep you fed, right? Can't do that if I'm here, and you're alone. For the first time since he'd found her. Kiri's scales blazed with pure gold light. Yes, she said. Yes. I want to come home with you. Marcus smiled now. He just had to figure out how to make that happen without getting arrested. But that was a problem for tomorrow tonight. He had a family to take care of, even if that family was a little unusual. The security sweep happened on a Tuesday morning. Marcus woke up to pounding on his door and knew immediately that this was it. Everything he'd been afraid of for the past month was about to happen. Security. A harsh voice called. Open up. Chun. Marcus looked at Kiri, who was frozen in her nest of blankets. Her scales had gone completely gray with fear. Hide. Marcus whispered urgently. The ventilation shaft. But before Kiri could move, the door overriding gauge station security could open any door on the lower decks if they had cause. And apparently, they had cause now. Thrall stepped into the quarters. His forearms empty, but ready behind him were 2 other security officers. Morning inspection, Thrall said, his voice flat. We've had reports of unusual energy signatures in this sector. Marcus stood up, putting himself between Thrall and the closet where Kiri was hiding. Everything's clean here, Marcus said, trying to sound calm. Just finishing my sleep cycle before shift. Thrall's eyes, all 3 of them, swept the small quarters. Mind if we take a look around? It wasn't really a question. Do I have a choice? Marcus asked. No. Thrall moved into the room, his scanner already out and active. Other officers began checking the bathroom and the storage areas. Marcus felt his heart hammering. This was it. This was where he lost everything, his job, his visa, his ability to help Lily. This was where Kiri got taken away to who knows where. Sir, one of the officers called from the closet. Got something here. Thrall moved quickly, pushing past Marcus. Marcus followed, helpless to stop what was happening. There in the closet, surrounded by blankets and trying to make herself as small as possible. Was Kiri. Her scales were completely gray now. Nearly white with terror, she looked at Marcus with those enormous golden eyes. And he saw the apology in them. "Well," Thrall said quietly, "that's definitely an unregistered xenospecies." He turned to Marcus, and his expression was hard. "You know the penalties for harboring undocumented aliens, Chun." "I know," Marcus said. His voice came out steadier than he felt. "Deportation, possible criminal charges, permanent visa revocation. You want to tell me why you'd risk all that?" Thrall gestured at Kiri with one of his 4 hands. "For a trafficked virathy that you can't possibly take care of." Marcus looked at Kiri, then back at Thrall. "Because she asked for help," he said simply, "and I couldn't walk away. Couldn't or wouldn't." "Same thing." Thrall made a sound that might have been frustration. "Do you have any idea how much paperwork this is going to create?" "I'll be filing reports for weeks." He pulled out restraint cuffs. "I'm going to need you to step aside. Chun, we'll take the virathy into custody, and..." That's when Kiri did something Marcus had never seen before. She opened her wings fully, spread them as wide as they would go in the cramped closet, and she projected Marcus, felt it like a wave. It wasn't words or images exactly. It was pure emotion, pure experience, pure memory. He felt what Kiri had felt in the cage on the smuggling ship. The darkness, the cruelty, the slow starvation as hatred poisoned her. He felt her escape, the terror of hiding in the station's forgotten corners, and then he felt the moment Marcus had offered her pizza. It was such a simple thing, such a stupid human thing, offering food to someone who couldn't eat it. But in that moment, Kiri had felt something she hadn't felt in months. Someone cared. Someone gave without expecting anything back. Someone was kind because kindness mattered. The projection expanded, showing the weeks that followed Marcus, sharing stories about Lily. Marcus laughing at terrible jokes and remembering happy memories. Marcus worrying about her, planning for her, risking everything for her, not because she was useful, not because he'd get something out of it, just because she needed help, and he was human, and humans apparently couldn't help themselves. The wave of emotion hit everyone in a 50-meter radius. Crew members in neighboring quarters stopped what they were doing. Guards in the hallway felt tears they didn't understand, and Thrall felt 40 cycles of cynicism crack under the weight of one man's stubborn, reckless, completely illogical kindness. When the projection faded, the room was silent. Thrall stood there, all 3 eyes wide, his scanner forgotten in his lower left hand. "That's," he started, then stopped. "That's what you felt?" Kiri nodded weakly. The projection had taken a lot out of her. Marcus knelt beside her, not caring anymore what Thrall saw. "You okay?" he asked quietly. "Tired," Kiri whispered, "but okay." Thrall holstered his scanner. He looked at Marcus, then at Kiri, then back at Marcus. "Humans," he said finally. "You're all insane." "Probably," Marcus agreed. He waited for the cuffs, for the arrest, for everything to fall apart instead. Thrall turned to the other officers. "False alarm," he said. "Sensor malfunction. File it as equipment error." The officers looked confused. "But sir, we clearly found..." "I said file it as equipment error," Thrall repeated, his voice harder. "Are we clear?" The officers exchanged glances but nodded. "Yes, sir." They left, looking back at Marcus and Kiri with uncertainty. Thrall stayed. He stood there for a long moment, just looking at them. 40 cycles I've worked stations," he said quietly. 40 cycles of smugglers and scammers and every species looking out for themselves. Never seen anything like that. He shook his head. "You risked everything. Your job, your visa, your ability to help your daughter. All for someone you just met. Someone you couldn't even feed properly." "Yeah," Marcus said. "I did." "Why?" Marcus thought about it. "Because she was scared and alone and needed help," he said. "Because someone had hurt her and I could make it stop." Because he stopped. searching for the right words, because I'm human, I guess, and we're not good at walking away. Thrall laughed. It was a bitter sound. The galaxy measures worth in credits and conquest, in power and profit and what you can take. He looked at Kiri, who was watching him with cautious hope. But you offered pizza to someone who couldn't eat it. You shared memories with someone who needed emotions to survive. You risked deportation for someone most species would have reported. He moved toward the door, then paused. I'm going to file my report as a sensor malfunction, he said. As far as station records are concerned, this sweep found nothing. But Chun, you need to get proper documentation for her. I can't keep covering for you. Marcus felt hope surge in his chest. How do I do that? There's a Virathi embassy on the core worlds, Thrall said. They handle immigration cases. You'll need sponsorship, proof of adequate care, all the standard paperwork. I'll forward you the forms. He opened the door, and Chun, what you did today, what I felt. Thrall seemed to struggle with the words. It reminded me why I took this job in the first place, before 40 cycles of cynicism. So thank you for that. He left. The door sliding shut behind him, Marcus sat down on the floor, his legs suddenly weak. Did that just happen? He asked. Kiri crawled out of the closet and into his lap. Her scales were starting to regain color. Humans, she said softly, echoing Thrall's words. You are all insane. The beautiful insane. Marcus laughed, the sound a little shaky. We're not out of the woods yet, he said. We've got 3 months to get you proper documentation before my contract ends. We can do it. Kiri said her scales were glowing gold now. We are family now. Families do impossible things. Marcus held her carefully. This tiny dragon who'd somehow become one of the most important beings in his life. Yeah, he agreed. Yeah, we are. Outside the door, station life continued. But inside Marcus's quarters, something rare had happened, something the galaxy didn't see very often. Kindness had won, not because it was smart or profitable or logical, but because a human had decided it mattered more than anything else. The paperwork was a nightmare. Marcus had thought applying for visa extensions was bad. This was 10 times worse. He spent his off hours filling out forms, submitting documents, and waiting for responses from bureaucrats on worlds he'd never heard of. The Virathi embassy required proof of adequate emotional environment, which meant Marcus had to document that he could provide sufficient positive emotions for Kiri's survival. How do you prove you're happy enough? Marcus had wondered while filling out Form 73B. The answer turned out to be character reference. Thrall provided one, which surprised Marcus. The human demonstrated exceptional empathic capacity and commitment to xenospecies welfare. The security officer had written in his official statement. Other crew members provided references to the dock manager talked about improved morale. The maintenance crew mentioned Marcus's positive attitude. Even the bartender from the upper deck lounge wrote a letter. Though Marcus had only been there twice apparently, word had spread about what happened, not the full story. Thrall had kept that quiet, but enough people knew Marcus had helped someone in need on a station full of beings just trying to survive. That meant something. The hardest part was telling Lily. Marcus had put it off as long as he could, but 3 weeks before his contract ended, he finally worked up the courage during their weekly call. So, kiddo, he said, trying to sound casual, funny story. Remember how I said this station had all kinds of aliens? Lily's face lit up on the screen. She was 8 years old and loved space stories. Did you meet a cool one? What species? Can you show me? Marcus took a breath. Well, I kind of adopted one. There was a pause. You what? I found someone who needed help. Marcus explained. She's a Virathi. They're these small dragon-like aliens and she was in trouble. So, I've been taking care of her. And I was hoping. Maybe she could come home with us. Lily stared at him through the screen. Dad, you adopted an alien, technically. The paperwork is still processing. You adopted a space dragon. Lily's shriek was so loud that Marcus had to turn down the volume. Can I meet her? Is she there? What's her name? Does she breathe fire? Can she fly? Does she slow down? Marcus laughed. Yes, you can meet her. Kiri, come here. Kiri had been waiting nervously off-screen, crept into view, her scales shifting colors with anxiety. Hi, she said quietly. Hello? Lily, your father talks about you always. Lily's eyes went huge. She's beautiful, she breathed, and she talks. Dad, she talks. And you said I could have a dog. This is way better than a dog. Over the next hour, Lily asked approximately 1,000,000 questions. What did Kiri eat? Emotions. Where does she sleep? In a nest. Could she do tricks? She could fly a little. Did she like stories? Yes, very much. Could they be sisters? That last question made Kiri's scales go bright gold. I would like that. Kiri said softly, I would like to be sisters. Lily beamed. This is the best news ever. She announced, wait until I tell Grandma and Grandpa. They're going to freak out. After the call ended, Marcus sat back with a sigh. That went better than expected. Your daughter is wonderful, Kiri said. She has emotions like fire. Like you, is family trait. Marcus smiled. Yeah, I guess it is. The final weeks on the station flew by. The Virathi embassy approved Kiri's immigration petition. Thoreau helped push through the expedited processing, using his security credentials in ways that were probably not entirely legal. Consider it a favor. Thoreau had said when Marcus thanked him, just do me a favor in return. Don't tell anyone how soft I've gotten. On Marcus's last day of work, the crew threw him a small going-away party. It was awkward and sweet and exactly what Marcus needed. The dock manager gave a short speech about dedication and kindness. Someone had made a cake that said, good luck on Earth, in messy frosting. Kiri stayed hidden in Marcus's quarters for the party, but Marcus could feel her presence in the back of his mind. They developed that connection over the months. He could sense when she was hungry or scared or happy. It was a Virathi thing. She'd explained when someone fed you consistently. You bonded. The transport to Earth took 2 weeks. Marcus and Kiri had a small cabin on a commercial passenger ship. It was cramped and the food was terrible. But neither of them cared. They were going home during the journey. Kiri asked questions about Earth. Is it true humans have one moon? Just one, Marcus confirmed. Some planets have like 6 or 7, right? My homeworld has 3, Kiri said, but I do not remember it well. I was taken when very young. Marcus felt the familiar anger at that. Well, Earth has oceans and mountains and cities, he said, and a lot of humans who feel things very loudly. You'll never go hungry there. I am not worried about hunger, Kiri said. I am worried about fitting in. What if humans do not like Virathi? What if I am too different? Marcus looked at her seriously. Kiri, you're a tiny dragon who eats emotions and glows different colors. Kids are going to think you're the coolest thing ever. And anyone who has a problem with you is going to have a problem with me. Got it? Kiri's scale shimmered. Got it. They arrived at Earth on a Tuesday morning. Marcus hadn't seen his home planet in 18 months when the ship broke through the atmosphere, and he saw the blue oceans and green continents below. Something in his chest tightened. That's home, he told Kiri. That's where we live. Kiri pressed her face against the window. Her eyes wide. Is beautiful. So much water. So much life. Lily and her grandparents were waiting at the spaceport. Marcus saw them before they saw him. Lily bouncing on her toes with excitement, scanning the crowd of arriving passengers. Then she spotted him. Dad. Lily crashed into him with enough force to knock the breath out of his lungs. Marcus hugged her tight. breathing in the smell of her shampoo and feeling tears he hadn't expected. "I missed you so much," Lily said. "Did you bring her? Is she here? Where's Kiri?" Kiri had been hiding in Marcus's jacket. She poked her head out cautiously. And Lily gasped. "Hi," Kiri said. "Hello, sister." Lily very carefully held out her hand. Kiri climbed onto it, her scales shifting through rainbows of color. "You're real." Lily breathed. "You're actually real." "I am real," Kiri confirmed. "And you are exactly as wonderful as Marcus said." Lily looked at her dad with shining eyes. "This is the best day of my entire life." Marcus's former in-laws approached more slowly. They looked uncertain, which was fair. Their son-in-law had just arrived from space with an alien, Marcus. Lily's grandmother said carefully, Is she safe?" "Completely," Marcus assured them. "Kiri's been living with me for months. She's family." Lily's grandfather studied Kiri for a moment. Then he reached out and gently touched one of her wings. "Well," he said, "she's certainly unique. Welcome to Earth." Kiri's scales blazed gold. Thank you for accepting me." The apartment Marcus had rented was small. It had 2 bedrooms, a kitchen that barely fit 3 people, and neighbors who played music too loud. It was perfect. Lily had decorated Kiri's nest with drawings and fairy lights, put up posters of dragons and spaceships on the walls. "So you feel at home." Lily explained Kiri's scales hadn't stopped glowing since they arrived. The first few weeks were an adjustment. Lily had to go back to school and couldn't spend every moment with Kira. Marcus had to find a new job, something that paid less than the station work, but let him be home for dinner. Kiri had to learn about Earth customs, Earth food, even though she couldn't eat it, and Earth entertainment, but they figured it out together. Marcus got a job as a building maintenance supervisor. It wasn't glamorous, but it was steady. Kiri discovered that human children produced the most intense positive emotions she'd ever encountered. Lily's school friends thought having a dragon sister was the coolest thing ever, and slowly, their little family found its rhythm. Marcus would make dinner while Lily did homework, and Kiri helped they'd watch movies together. All 3 of them piled on the couch. They'd take walks in the park, Kiri riding on Lily's shoulder. They'd tell stories and share jokes and have arguments about whose turn it was to clean up. It was normal and strange and wonderful. One night, about 3 months after they'd arrived on Earth, Marcus was tucking Lily into bed. Kiri was already curled up in her nest in the corner, but she was listening. "Dad," Lily said sleepily, "I'm glad you found Kiri." "Me too." "Kiddo, do you think other humans would do what you did?" Lily asked. "Help someone even when it was really hard?" Marcus thought about it. "Yeah," he said finally, "I think they would. Humans are pretty good at that, at caring when it doesn't make sense, at loving when it's hard. That's what makes us human." Lily smiled. "That's what makes us family." Across the room, Kiri's scales glowed softly in the darkness. She radiated contentment, amplifying the love that filled the small apartment and spreading it out into the building. The neighbors would sleep better that night without knowing why. The stressed couple downstairs would feel a little more hopeful. The lonely elderly man next door would have pleasant dreams. That was what Virathy did. They took love and made more of it. And in this small apartment on a busy street in a crowded city on a planet full of humans who felt everything too much and cared too deeply and loved too recklessly, Kiri had all the nourishment she could ever need. "Good night, Dad," Lily said. "Good night, Kiri." "Good night, sisters," Kiri called back. "Good night, family." Marcus turned off the light and stood in the doorway for a moment. He thought about the night he'd found Kiri hiding behind a heating vent. He thought about offering her pizza she couldn't eat. He thought about all the impossible choices that had led to this moment. Galaxy measured worth in credits and conquest.